Huge changes are coming for the Toronto Blue Jays following their 7th straight loss yesterday, and fans are outraged. Management seems to be on the way out, and some recent rumors and speculation by Ben Nicholson-Smith, the Jays' top reporter, reveals that they are almost surely going to be selling at this year's trade deadline. So I'm going to break all that down in this episode, but before we do, if you're a part of the large percentage who aren't subscribed, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Even though the Jays are terrible, we're still going to be producing daily videos for you all. But yeah, yesterday was a very unfortunate loss. The Jays were obviously up 6-2 in the bottom of the 8th against a rival in the Boston Red Sox, and they were not able to get it done by any means. They choked the game like they've been doing for the past, really the whole season. And the sentiment right now among Jays fans is that changes need to happen, that management needs to go, and I think there's a very good chance over the next week or so. I mean, they've gotten swept in back-to-back series. They haven't had a 7-game losing streak in years, and now, I think since 2019 when the Jays really weren't good at all. And now it's at the point where fans have kind of had enough. And I want to dive into Ben Nicholson-Smith. He basically did a Q&A, kind of diving into what the Jays' plan will be depending on whether they win or lose. This was done a couple days ago before, I think 3 days ago, before they got swept once again in what was a embarrassing fashion in before yesterday's game. But you can see here, so they were asking Ben a lot of questions, and you can see the biggest question for the Blue Jays now is whether they can compete in 2025. Answer should be yes, obviously, because they have $250 million in payroll, and almost half the teams make the playoffs, but this core has real issues. Top prospects lost seasons. The farm is weak. And in a year where it's never been easier to make the playoffs, the Jays are not going to be able to make it. They have a less than a 5% chance as of the time of recording this video to make the playoffs. Is there time for the Jays for them to bounce back and potentially get into the playoffs? Yes. However, at this point, it looks very unlikely because it's both a personnel issue, it's a management issue, the team is just not good enough issue. They hit the least amount of home runs, or one of the least amount of home runs in baseball. Their pitching, albeit decent from the starting staff, their bullpen has been one of the worst in baseball. So now it's at the point where the floor is falling out from underneath them. And in a season where this was supposed to be the make or break year for them, with extensions coming up after next season, and Vladdy being a free agent, Bichette being a free agent, now they have to turn their heads and make the decision on if they're going to sell Chris Bassett, if they're going to trade Yusei Kikuchi, if they're going to trade Danny Jansen, a lot of these guys who are pending UFAs, because if they don't, then they're going to be left without any sort of runway regarding assets. And it's already a prospect pool that is one of the worst in baseball. And Aurelvis Martinez, their top prospect, is not going to play the rest of the year, at least until the very end, because he got suspended for PEDs. So it's a bit bleak, and I think, and it seems the sentiment from Jays fans and especially reporters is that huge changes are going to be coming. And some good news is that Bichette is going to be returning, which we'll get into in a little bit here. But you can see this from Dean Blundell, and he basically just aired out on the front office management. It says, and this is kind of the sentiment of Jays fans right now: can the Jays please fire Mark Shapiro and Atkins now? Anyone? And they're saying that Shapiro is obviously, he helped design the stadium, and that he's not a baseball guy. The point of this is, I'm not saying what he's saying is even true or if I agree with it, but fans are outraged, and they've been outraged for a while. And let's dive into a bit of the Q&A here. So they asked Ben, does this front office understand that this season has been unacceptable by every stretch? And he says, no one in the decision-making position, is happy with 2024 so far. Yes, they understand it. They want to win. It just hasn't happened nearly enough. And this is the big interesting thing that I wanted to go over. So they asked them, how far out of a playoff spot do you think the Jays will have to be before they sell at this year's deadline? And this was, again, 5 days ago. So they lost 4 games since then. 0 to 9% playoff odds is sell. 10 to 25% playoff odds are hold. 26 to 35 is a measured buy. And 36 plus is a bigger buy. Now, where they are right now is between 3 and 4% playoff odds after getting swept and then losing again to the Red Sox yesterday. So according to Ben Nicholson-Smith, it means they're almost definitely going to sell. And when you're looking at what players they're looking at potentially selling, again, you're looking at Yusei Kikuchi, Danny Jansen, and all of these. Chris Bassett, even, who's been probably arguably the Jays' best starter and most consistent starter this year, they could potentially be selling the core of the free agent. And obviously, not the core of the team, because the core of the team is built around Bo and Vladdy. But when you're looking at Chris Bassett, he's probably on the way out. Yusei Kikuchi, pending UFA after this year. Danny Jansen, I would hope they extend him, but it seems like they're going to be potentially shopping him. It's just becoming very, very scary. And in a year where we thought the Jays were going to be buyers, you can see they're not even close to 26 to 35% playoff odds. And then, again, the MLB now, with the third wildcard spot, most of the teams make the playoffs. Like 6 out of the 15 teams in each league make the playoffs. And the Jays are a hefty amount out. 6 or 7 games out of a playoff spot at this point is almost, I mean, it's of course unacceptable for the Jays standard and for the front office and for management, but it's almost shocking that they're as bad as they are, and that's contributed to a bunch of things. It's obviously not management's fault completely. It's not the front office's fault completely. They couldn't have predicted the bullpen to have so many injuries and blow up. And they also didn't predict, I assume, George Springer having the worst season of his career and in a fall off that almost needs to be studied with how bad it is, hitting below 200, really providing nothing. So there's been so many things. And in a year where the Jays were supposed to bounce back and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and Bichette were supposed to be the ones to step up and propel them into a playoff spot and for a World Series push, it's really been the opposite. Bo's taken a huge step back. Vladdy's taken a step forward, especially over the past few weeks. But it might be a bit too little too late. And I think their point now and their plan now is to rebuild or to retool at the very least around Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and some of their young guys, because there is some positives. Spencer Horwitz is really good. Hopefully Orelvis will end up being really good. Vladdy's very solid as well. And Davis Schneider and all those younger players. Addison Barger even looks like a core piece of this team going forward. They'll be the future of the team, but how you're going to build around them is going to be the big question. And even Ricky Tiedemann starting to pitch really, really well again. He's starting to get back into shape and getting back into being healthy. And he will be potentially an asset going forward for this year. But I also wanted to touch on a couple of other things here. So this is what John Schneider said after their 7th straight loss yesterday. And don't forget, this is a loss in which they were leading by 4 runs in the bottom of the 8th inning. So they just needed 6 more outs while up 4 runs to win the game. And they ultimately got walked off in the bottom of the 9th. But this is what John Schneider had to say. This game is cruel. The game can really beat you up. It can punch you. Over the course of the last week, the guys are going about it the right way. They're not quitting. Now, I don't know exactly what would entail quitting. They've lost 7 straight. Obviously, the players aren't going to give up and completely quit. But John Schneider's job is almost certainly in jeopardy. Charlie Montoya was fired when the Jays were 46 and 42, and they were holding a wild card spot. Now the Jays are 35 and 43, I believe, or 35 and 42, and they're not holding a wild card spot at all. They're actually well out of a wild card spot, and obviously Montoya wasn't the manager to lead this team to playoff success, but neither is John Schneider, who was under Montoya a couple years ago when he got let go. So at what point do they continue to just let John Schneider go out there? Will Mark Shapiro and ownership allow Ross Atkins to fire his 3rd manager in his tenure since 2015? Maybe. That'll be up to them to decide. Obviously, John Gibbons was fired originally, and now Charlie Montoya, and then potentially John Schneider. So it's going to be a very interesting time. But again, the biggest question is, can they compete with this core? I don't know. I don't think so. I think they definitely need to retool, whether that's in the form of Vladdy, whether that's in the form of trading Bichette, maybe trading again, hopefully retooling this trade deadline by getting rid of. They have a lot of rentals they can get rid of and recoup some really good assets for. And according to his prediction here, Ben Nicholson-Smith, the Jays insider, it looks like selling is going to happen. But I'm curious to see what you all think about this. Do you think John Schneider should be fired? Do you think Ross Atkins should go first? I'm of the opinion that Atkins needs to go first, and then the rest would follow. But let me know down in the comment section below. Thank you guys for watching. See you soon.